What's going on, STR Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the Short-Term Rental Secrets podcast. I'm your host, Mike Shogren, here as always with my main man and brother from another mother, Mr. Emmanuel Pani. You are looking good, dude. Finally got the 4K cam set up, looking fresh. You guys got to check this one out on YouTube. He's never looked so good.
200 episodes in, I thought it was about time. And for Mark Simpson, you can see my chest there now. So here's for you. But brother, I am so grateful. I was reminded today that every time I raise my standards around something and something becomes no longer acceptable, the next thing that comes in is always better. And as you know, last year, I have a massage therapist that used to come to the house every week. Since I herniated my back, she has saved my life. But she was always late, always late. And end of last year, we had this moment where 5 or 6 minutes after she was supposed to be at my house, she texted. She's like, "Hey, I'm not going to be able to make it." And it just wasn't acceptable for me. And so for this last couple of weeks, I was looking for somebody, and I found somebody today that I went to this morning. The best sport massage I've ever had in my life. And I didn't want to cancel it with her. She's been with me since like 2017. All these stories, all these things, right? And then I was just like, dude, every time I've raised my standards around something, whatever comes next, it's always better, always. And so now I'm like just reminded of that. I'm like, okay, where else am I being afraid of raising my standards? Why am I afraid to raise my standards? And is there something better waiting for me on the other side of raising those standards?
I think it always comes down to fear of the unknown. We talk about it all the time. I remember like anytime I've had to let a cleaner go or a contractor, it's always like, am I going to find somebody else or whatever? But anytime you do, it just tees you up for better stuff, which ties into what we're talking about today, getting on FPT cartels, man. We haven't talked about this in a little while, but want to do this episode for those of you that are seriously looking to get in your first hotel deal in 2025. I've been in this since 2020. He's been in it since what, 2007 or something crazy? 2010. Like, you've been in it a minute. So they're amazing, and there are some similarities, but there's a lot of differences. And so we want to do this episode for those of you that are really looking at this seriously for 2025 and some things to look out for. And so thought about this in a couple different buckets. And so the first part is why do we like hotels to begin with? And so to me, there's really four big things that separate hotels from STR. The first and most obvious that all of you will understand is just the regulation side of it. Like, you're not at the mercy of changing short-term rental regulations. You're locked in as long as you make sure that your property is zoned correctly when you're going through your due diligence when you're buying it, but it should be zoned as a hotel. And so that's the biggest thing. And actually, regulation can help you because it limits your competition.
The second thing, which is probably one of my favorite things, is just the economy of scale, right? You're going to have an economy of scale in terms of, like, for me, I leverage that also to grow my STR management business. Because we were having this conversation on a boardroom call the other day. My on-site manager that does maintenance has somebody under him, and that maintenance guy that we pay a salary is the one that we use on the management side as well. And then we get to charge the owners on the management side. I buy the sheets all in bulk, and I charge owners on the management side linen and towels fees. And it's all stuff that I buy in bulk that I would never have had if I didn't have the scale that we have.
Yeah. And you do one deal, and instead of buying one house, one unit, you're buying 15, 20, 30, or 50 in one transaction with 1, 2, or 3 roofs instead of, 50, right? So you just inherently get economies of scale when you're in hotels, right? The next thing, and for me, the most exciting part is the forced appreciation, right? Because commercial real estate is valued differently than residential real estate. And this is one of the frustrating things with short-term rentals is you buy a single family house, and let's just say you buy an existing short-term rental. And when you buy it, it does 100 grand in revenue. By the time you put your magic on it, you fix it up, you optimize the operations, you get it to 200 grand in income. It doesn't matter. It's not going to be valued twice as much as when you bought it. But in the hotel world, it does, right? Because the valuations are just different. It's based on the income that it produces. And so you have a lot more control over the valuation of a commercial property than you do over a residential property. So you can really juice that wealth building ability when you get into commercial way more than you can ever do with single families. And to me, that's the most exciting part. And the last thing that I'll say is there's just less competition, right? A lot of competition in the short-term rental space. There's a lot of competition in the hotel space as well, but not when you get into the right size deal, which we'll talk about in a second, because it's too big for the regular ordinary investor, but it's way too small for some of the larger private equity players. There's this nice middle ground that you can play in that E and I have been playing in for the last 10 years that works very, very well in the hotel space.
100%. And this one last piece that you shared, it's honestly, it's one of the biggest pieces of conversation that I have with people. They want to get into the boutique hotel space and are super frustrated because they have amazing vacation rentals. And then when they go to sell it or they go to like maximize on all this hard work that they put in, it doesn't get recognized. But the system is rigged against you because there is no, like, doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter how good of a STR operator you are, how good your property is. You can't break the rules of commercial versus residential real estate. Like, no bank is gonna appraise it to the way that you want it, right? So it's super, super important. So, Mike, what is the right size?
So there's some rules of thumb that I will say. The most important thing is how much revenue can it produce once you finish, renovating it and updating it or whatever work you're going to do to it. In my opinion, if it can't generate around $1 million a year in top line revenue, it's going to be very challenging because you're not going to have the revenue to support a team and you're going to end up buying a job. You're going to become an innkeeper if you buy something that can only bring in $500,000 a year because you just don't have the money to hire a team and housekeepers and an operations manager and whatever you're going to need, which again, we'll talk about in a little bit of who do you need on your team, but you're going to be buying a job. And I know when we got into our first hotel deal, I was planning on running it completely remote, just like I was doing with the short term rental portfolio. But once we got into it, purely based on how the property was laid out. It was an old Victorian mansion that got chopped up into hotel rooms, and it was just confusing to find their rooms, honestly. And we turned it into a high-end boutique, so the nightly rates are up there. So when you're charging a premium for a product, there's certain expectations that guests have. So we had to pivot and eventually end up staffing this hotel and everything else. Fortunately, the revenue was there to support it, but if it wasn't, I would have been stuck as an innkeeper for the foreseeable future, running this thing day to day to make sure that it was profitable, right? So the big thing is the revenue rule of thumb. It's got to be able to do around $1 million or more. I think a good sweet spot is probably somewhere between 20 to 30 units. But again, it really depends on what's the nightly rate that you can get in that market for this type of property. You might be able to do that with 10 units or 10 rooms. You might need 40, right? But I think that really 20 to 30 is a really good starting point where it's not too huge, it's not too small, it has enough economies of scale that it should make sense. Typically, probably somewhere in that $2 to $5 million price range is a good spot. And again, going back to the point I made earlier, it's a little too big for a regular, single family investor to go take down, but it's just way too small to attract any competition from some bigger players. So a lot of these mom and pop innkeepers and motel owners over the years that are looking to retire, a lot of the boomers that have owned these things for a long time, this is right in that wheelhouse, right in that price range, right in that deal size that have a lot of value that you can add to them. So there's a ton of opportunity right now for the next few years while these boomers are starting to fade off into retirement and they want to exit these deals. The one thing that I will say, and we don't have time to get into it on this, but when you're just quick rules of thumb, when you're running your numbers on these things, you're going to do a much deeper analysis. But for a quick sniff test to see if it even makes sense, just run it at a 65 to 70% expense ratio, right? You might be running your short term rentals at 40% or whatever. I'm telling you from experience and from hotel industry trends, you're going to be around 60 to 70% expenses. You just will. And right. And that's for a limited service hotel, nothing fancy. If you've got restaurants and bellmen and all this stuff, you're probably going to be somewhere between 70 to 80. But run it at a 70% expense ratio to be conservative. You can whittle it down to 65. Ideally, you want to be around 60 to 62 once you really dial it in. But I'd rather have you be more conservative. And I've always said this, I'd rather lose a good deal than buy a bad deal because you buy one bad hotel deal, it will crush you at the beginning, right? You're not talking about losing 50 grand. You're talking about losing $500,000 or $1 million, right? So I'd rather have you be very conservative with your underwriting And this is just a mistake that I see a lot of people making. They're looking at these sellers' expenses and they're like, oh, yeah, they're running it at 38%. Well, yeah, that person is an innkeeper that doesn't have expenses for any staff and everything else. They're running the front desk, they're answering the phones, they're cleaning the rooms, they're doing all the handyman work. Like, yeah, you don't want to buy a job. So run the numbers as a business. So again, 65% rule for that.
Yeah. And I think that rule for you guys to keep in the back pocket in two scenarios. When you're underwriting it yourself, and that's one of the first things that I look at when I get P&Ls and when I get financials. Because again, it is a red flag for me. So if somebody sends me something and like, it's a great deal, top line, NOI, and I'm looking at it and it's not near what I know to be the rule of thumb, so between the 60, 65, 70%, but it's something ridiculous in the 20, 30, 40%, I'm like, it's one or two things, right? It's either these books they're not kosher, or is what Mike said, is like this person is running it themselves. They're not paying salaries out. Because also another big thing for you to consider is if you're inheriting a team, which is what we're going to talk about next, are you paying them to the level that you need to pay them in order for them to do the kind of level of work and service that you need them to do? Because I think a lot of the times people, when you go into a new business, is understanding, are you paying for A players while you're supposed to be paying for them? Because again, this is the next level, right? So the next level does not come with the same challenges or the same little steps that you did for your STR business. So we're not going to boutique hotels starting by building furniture like we've all done. We're not getting to boutique hotels by going to show the guests how to use a TV. We have all done, right? It's a different ballgame. So we're going different. So in understanding, like kind of creating that business for yourself and being very mindful of not buying a job.
And
I
this
think
the
leads to
scale of it just doesn't allow for it. If you're again, think about it. Time is money, right? So you buy this property, say it's 2 million bucks. You're still paying at least interest only on that debt that you used to buy the property while you're fixing it up. So if you anticipate painting every room yourself, fixing it up yourself, building all the furniture yourself, it's going to take you months to do that for a 20 to 30 room property. So that's all lost money, right? And you're probably going to make some mistakes and it's going to take you way longer instead of just hiring people, right? So again, the scale of it, you can't do everything at this size. So which leads us into our next point of who do you need on your team in order to effectively run a hotel, right? And if you're going bare bones, I'm talking like contactless check-in, no front staff, no nothing. You're going to run it remote, like a motel style property would work for that. Okay, you're going to need a really good contractor that is super responsive to you, that's local to the market, that if you have an issue at 10 o'clock at night, that person can run over there and fix it, right? At a minimum, just like you would for your STRs. You need somebody super reliable and very knowledgeable that is local that can get over there and give you that bandwidth. Then you're going to need really good housekeepers, right? In my experience, at the beginning, we hired a third party company that we were using for years to clean our local short term rental properties. They wanted to throw in the towel at 9 months, and I stretched them to 15 months, but they were completely burnt out. And then we ended up building a team in house. And we've done that for every property, every hotel that we've done since then, because it's a different ball game when you're turning over 10, 12, 15, 20, 25 rooms in a day, every single day, than it is to go clean a single family house every 3 days. It's just a different speed, a different pressure. It's just way faster paced. And the cleaners that I worked with just got burnt out. So we ended up building a team in-house. So ideally, you're going to want to have some type of lead cleaner who has experience in housekeeping that can supervise the rest of the team, QC it, ideally manage their scheduling so that you're not dealing with managing all the cleaner schedules. And you're going to pay that person more, right? Because they have additional responsibilities. They're in a bit of a leadership role. You're going to need a lead cleaner or a lead housekeeper, a few housekeepers. And again, it's going to vary based on the number of doors you have. And we've got calculations that we use and everything else, but you're going to need a decent amount of housekeepers. A lot of them may be part-time. And then ideally, what we found really drives efficiency is if you can have a dedicated laundry person. If you can fathom the amount of laundry that goes into a 20-room hotel every day, it's a lot of laundry. And what we found was when we ended up hiring somebody that all they did all day long was just do laundry, treat stains, make sure everything gets out, they wash it, they dry it, they fold it, they organize the inventory. That's all they do all day. It allows the rest of the team to go turn over rooms way faster because they're not going to turn a room and then run back and do laundry and then go turn a room and then go back and check on the laundry and then fold it and everything else. So when you have that scale, you can have a dedicated laundry person that all that they're doing is just turning laundry over all day. And in between doing the laundry shifts, they can organize some of the supplies, they can do inventory lists for you, all of that stuff, right?
Mhm.
So you got good contractor, ideally in-house housekeeping. And then the big one was just really upping your VA guest support team. So if you're not going to have anybody local answering the phones, you're not going to have a front desk. I had to staff up very quickly on the VA side because the biggest thing that I did not expect was the volume of phone calls that you get to hotels. So, for context, the first hotel that we did, little 13 room, really nice, cute boutique inn, that property was generating over 500 inbound phone calls per month to that property. That's a ton of phone calls. So, if you don't have a team that can handle that volume, you're going to lose a lot of business. You're going to start getting bad reviews or you're just going to be on the phone all day long and you can't possibly facilitate 500 phone calls in a month yourself,
Mhm.
not and get everything else done. So, staffing up and having a really good VA support team is going to be huge for you.
The other big thing on the team side, I think is also very important, is in understanding like where you're taking it down and who you're taking it down with. So I think a big thing for you, which has been a great part of your success, is you own your lane and you have two partners that own their lanes. Because again, guys, it's not a single family, right? And there is a lot more stuff to do. Yeah.
Commercial is a 100% a team game, right? So, like my lane that he's talking about, I have two great partners on the hotels that I've done. I brought the operational experience of as far as running a hospitality business and day to day and overseeing and like building the team and all that stuff. They brought a lot of the deal experience on negotiating deals, finding deals, getting the lending, and then running point on all the construction because that alone is a full-time job even in of itself. Trying to manage a massive renovation project on a 10, 20, 30, 50 room project.
Mhm.
It's a massive undertaking and you can lose your shirt if you don't know how to estimate costs properly, if you don't know how to manage subcontractors properly. Like it's a massive undertaking. So having the right team around you, whether they're partners or people that you know, like, and trust that have done stuff at this scale is going to be huge. The days of you trying to do everything yourself in an STR business are gone when you get into the hotel space. It's just impossible. The scale is too big. There's not enough hours in the day and you're going to drive yourself crazy and make too many mistakes. So the good thing is the deals are big enough that there's enough meat on the bone for everybody to win. But you got to get the right people on your team that can run those points. So
Mhm.
thank you for reminding me of that.
Yeah,
Because the
absolutely.
construction piece is something that we see all the time that people drastically underestimate renovation costs and timelines and everything else.
Yeah.
So huge
And
piece of it.
and it's also like a big going back to the fact that this is commercial and a lot of the times your loan structure is going to be different. If you delay a single family for a month, is one story. If we're off track by 2 or 3 months on a boutique hotel, that's a lot harder for you to swing, right? If I'm late a month and I don't launch a single family, I'm having to cough out of pocket my mortgage for a month. But if your mortgage is like mine, that's $55,000.
It's not chump change.
You delay that by 3 months, stuff starts to hurt a little bit, right? Which I think goes to the next part of what we wanted to talk about is, are you ready? Like, are you actually ready to make this jump? And in our mind, since we launched the boardroom, we've added about 26 hotels probably between all of our members, maybe a little bit more.
I think it was 22, but that was like 6 months ago. So we
Yeah.
probably added since then. So yeah.
So based on that, what do you need to have under your belt, right? Like if we're going to like jujitsu, right? Like I need to have 4 white stripes before I get to my first white on my blue belt, right?
Yeah, it's like learning how to walk before you run. So if you're brand new, you've never done STRs, you want to get into hotels, that's fine. But you got to partner with somebody that has experience, honestly, because it's just way. it can get overwhelming very quickly. Like, you have one issue at a single family house. Okay, great. You have an issue at a hotel that extrapolates across 20, 30, 40 reservations at a time.
Mhm.
It just can get very overwhelming very quickly. Right. So, what I would say is you've got to have some experience with STRs and you've got to have some experience managing a team. Ideally, you've got to have some VAs that you've been overseeing. You've got some SOPs in place. You know how to lead a little bit because what will happen is it's gonna level up your leadership to a whole new level because you're quarterbacking this whole operation, and it's amazing. Like, I'm not trying to discourage anybody. I just want you to know because there's a lot of posts online now about, like, how amazing hotels are, and they are. I love them. Like, I wanna do more of them, or I'm gonna take down 2 more this year, right? And so I just want you to know what you're getting into because it's not always sunshine and rainbows, right? And so, ideally, having some experience with STRs, understanding the hospitality business, understanding some marketing, guest expectations, communication, SOPs, having a team, like you've gotten your feet wet, cut your teeth with STRs for a bit, and you're comfortable and you've got your operations dialed in on the STR side. Now you're ready for your next challenge. Like, to
Mhm.
me, that's the perfect logical next step. When we got our first deal, I had 15 STRs across 5 different states. Like, I was comfortable running remote teams across the country. Like, we were pretty tight on all of our operations. They're always getting better, but it wasn't like I just went from one STR into a hotel deal right out the gate. Like,
Mhm.
it did not happen that way. Right. So
Can we share
having
the
some experience, what?
I wanted to share the humorous kind of story about what happened on your opening day.
Yeah.
Just to let people understand there's not all sunshine and rainbows. And like we say that not to scare you, but from a place of experience. Like we've been there. And you just heard Mike, right? 15 STRs, 5 states, everything is good. Malt, like big old renovation, Rockport, night and day. Beautiful, beautiful. I'm just gonna set the stage for you. Beautiful, like beautiful front yard. Everything is
5
perfect.
months of renovation work, like, COVID,
Ready.
finally, the ban just got lifted so we could open up June of 2020. Opening day comes, I show up, it's a beachfront place, so I'm in my, my khaki shorts and my flip-flops and my polo, doing the whole, like, local, like, beach vibe, whatever, and I walk in on opening day, we had sold out for our first night, and I walk into our beautiful, brand new renovated club room lounge into 3 inches of raw sewage that is just seeping through my bare feet in my flip-flops because the sewer main out front broke and backfilled 3 inches of raw sewage on our opening day. So, fortunately, I didn't panic, took a breath, started to call all my contacts around plumbing, Serve Pro, like all the different contacts that I knew that were contractors that had businesses that could help. One, figure out what the issue was. Two, get all this stuff out of here. Coordinate with my team to send messages to the guests that they're welcome to check in, but we can't get them into their rooms yet. We're dealing with something right now with a plumbing issue. We apologize. I think we gave everybody a credit to some dollar amount credit so they could go get lunch on us while we handled everything. And long story short, got in touch with the police, had an emergency police detail, had an emergency repair come out. They fixed the sewer main all within a 24-hour period. Everybody was able to stay at the hotel. They just couldn't use the toilet for the first couple hours and whatever. We got it handled, and then had Serve Pro come in and sanitize everything and disinfect stuff and replace some stuff that just couldn't be fixed, whatever. But it was a pretty crazy, stressful opening day, like day one of my very first hotel. But we got through it, right? Now, if
Mhm.
this was my first runaround with dealing with property issues and everything else, that would have been way more overwhelming than what it needed to be, right?
100%.
And so, is at each level you get to, you just get more comfortable solving problems,
Mhm.
right? But if you've never solved $100 problem, it's really hard to solve $100,000 problem and so on and so forth, right? So that's what I mean. It's important to just get your feet wet first, have some experience, or partner with somebody that has experience so that they can walk you through those steps.
Yeah. So the first time they get wet is not from sewer water and from something else. But the reason I brought that up is because again, if it wasn't for the team sport aspect of your STR business, you wouldn't have had anybody to call. Like who were you gonna call? So again, we both believe that this is the future. This has been one of the big hacks in our life.
Yeah. And it's something that we've been working quietly on with our boardroom members, really doing some one-on-one coaching around it, helping them get some deals, helping them with underwriting, helping them find funding, all these different things. And so, just want to share some insights with everybody here on what it looks like. And for those of you that are ready for that next step and you want to get into it, we're going to do a deep dive training this upcoming week, Wednesday the 29th at noon Eastern. You can go to hotels.strsecrets.com and we're going to do a detailed 90-minute training where we can really pull back the curtain and show you a lot of the ins and outs on how you can get into the hotel game in 2025. And again, if you're brand new, this is not for you, right? Like if you've been in the game for a bit and you're really looking to get to that next level and you've been thinking about hotels, come on, it's totally free. We'll have some Q&A at the end as well. You can ask us your questions. I'm an open book, happy to, answer whatever questions you got. But to me, this is the next logical evolution, and this is how you really start to scale at a much faster rate and really start to one, increase your cash flow, but also really start to build that quote unquote generational wealth because you have such a greater ability to force the appreciation, continue to take down bigger deals, and continue to level up. I love the hotel game. I still love STRs. I still own STRs, but for me, it just the hotels just have such a multiplier effect on everything from your cash flow to your key count to your net worth to everything else that it's the next logical evolution. And again, to me right now, there's just such a huge opportunity in that space for those of you that are ready, just based on all of the properties that are going to be offloading in the next couple of years with a lot of these baby boomers retiring. So ton of opportunity coming up. So yeah, this upcoming week, Wednesday, noon Eastern, go to hotels.strsecrets.com. We'll have a lot of fun, 90 minutes, go into a lot more detail on like the tactical step-by-step on how to get into this game. Appreciate all you guys. You got anything else for us before we wrap?
No, just for the webinar, come join us regardless that you're thinking about buying a boutique hotel or if you think about managing a boutique hotel. We're going to give you actual intake for either one. Because again, we have had people that have added 6 hotels and some are managed, some are owned, right? But again, if you're looking to scale, even on your management side, 120 key hotel will get you close to financial freedom a lot faster than getting 20 single families, right? And we'll show you ways how to optimize and scale your current STR systems to take down boutique hotels. Do you want to buy them or manage them? We want to show you how to just add that to your arsenal one way or another.
100%. Well, as always, appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have an amazing week, and we will talk to you soon.
Ciao, guys.